So in the meanwhile, I'll just walk the participants through what we are doing. So hello and welcome everyone again. My name is Sana Majid and I'm learning strategist at atomcamp Arabia. And I'm very delighted to have you all here at atomcamp's webinar. So we provide AI solutions and AI trainings to organizations across UK, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan. And today's session is a very special one because we will be turning our focus to United States to understand AI journey in education, exploring what's working, what's not working, and what are the valuable lessons we can learn from the experience. So our speaker will walk us through their findings, research insights, real world applications of AI in education sector, especially in the US. And this is a great opportunity to reflect on global trends and see how they can inspire local actions in our regions. So I'm very delighted to have you all here for this exciting webinar. And we will be exploring specifically Utah's AI journey in education, the research impact, the insights, So we will be going through some fascinating case studies also. To lead us through this conversation, we are honored to have, with us, Mr. Matthew Winters. Matthew Winters he's an experienced educator, researcher, a driving force behind Utah's education initiatives, basically. And he has played
Santa, you just went on mute, actually, right in the middle of that.
Yes, okay. So where was I didn't know that you couldn't hear me.
No, it's okay. About halfway through my bio, you cut out. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, okay. So I was actually introducing our speaker, Matthew Winters. That he will be walking us through the insights, the research, all of that, especially what's happening in the US. And we are truly privileged to have you here today, Matthew. And let's get started. So thank you so much for joining, and we are looking forward to learning from your journey. So over to you, Matthew.
Awesome. So nice to meet you all, and thank you, Santa, for inviting me, and atomcamp for inviting me. When the opportunity came up and to do this, I was very excited. I'm always happy to talk to not just anyone in the United States, but anyone around the globe. I think we're all in this conversation around artificial intelligence, and particularly in education, together, and we're really trying to solve this in real time. And so I was very excited to have this opportunity and be able to talk to everyone on this call. And one thing I'll say before I get going, we'll leave about 10 to 12 minutes at the end for Q&A. So if there's anything that you'd like to ask me, or anything that I say that you're like, oh, I want to know more about that, feel free to put in the chat, or at the end we'll have some time to come off mic as well. To start off with, folks, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and you should see my presentation just about now. You guys see it okay? All right,
Yes.
looking good. So first off, before I get too deep into anything, folks, my name's Matt Winters. I work for the Utah State Board of Education. It's our kind of governance body around education in the state of Utah. But I work on a national level. I work with international teams as well. I've been in this role. I was the first in the country, the United States, to have this kind of role at a state agency like this. And I've only been in the role for about 16 months. Before that, I was in statewide education around the state of Utah and doing stuff at the national scale as well. And so just to give you a little bit of context, again, I work for the Utah State Board of Education. I'm the AI education specialist. I'll be year 16 in education in this upcoming year in 2026, so 15 plus years. I started as a college educator in English and then moved into K-12 in 2015. I've been a coach in different buildings around technology. I ran a makerspace. I love technology. I was turned on and switched on to artificial intelligence when I was very young, reading science fiction. And then in 2017, when I went to my first International Society for Technology and Education conference in Chicago, I saw a person use Alexa to answer classroom questions, and it made me go, wow, this is where we're headed. And now, roughly 8 years later, this is my job. Never planned to be an AI, but I absolutely love it. And I tell the people I work with in Utah that I'm not an AI builder. I'm not an AI programmer. What I am is I am really good at systems work and like trying to understand what we're doing from a system standpoint to help integrate AI and really think through what are the possibilities around artificial intelligence. I'll give you my email at the end, by the way, if you're interested. So just to give you an idea of Utah, I know Utah is, you probably know it's a state in the United States. You probably might know that we're in the Western United States. You may have heard of things like Arches National Park or Zion. If you haven't ever heard of it, we're close to Las Vegas. That's when I go traveling, that's how I explain it. People don't know where I'm at. But it's a massive space. This is the state of Utah, all of our counties. We have 41 public districts and about 135 charter schools or charter networks across the state, which isn't a lot comparatively to California or Texas, but what it allows us to do is understand our needs very quickly. But we're also a very geographically large state. So this area right here that I point out to is this little county right here. It's called San Juan County. It's the area that has the Grand Canyon, Lake Powell, Arches National Park, all these amazing spots. This route right here from Blanding to Navajo Mountain, that is from the district office to their farthest away high school, Navajo Mountain, that has about 50 students. It's a 6-hour drive. Utah is a geographically large space. So just to give you an illustration, if you've ever been to the west or the eastern border of the United States, the East Coast, this is what that same county looks like overlaid on Boston. It roughly takes up 3 states worth of size in just a space that has roughly less than 1,000 students in the entire area. And so we're a very interesting place to live. We have really, really dense populations around Salt Lake City, which is our capital city in the state. But then we have these very large scale areas that have very few people in them. And so I get a lot of what we call rural context, and I also get a lot of urban context. And it's really helpful in my job to help roll out artificial intelligence. So one of the big things that I want to start with is Utah is adopting AI very quickly and working through this process at a very rapid rate in comparison to other large scale educational systems, not because of the technology. That helps, and we'll talk about that, but it's actually more because of the historical investment in innovation, collaboration, and shared expertise. These are all what we call human capital systems, things that allow us as researchers and educators and systems workers and government employees to move faster than we would normally and really get into some interesting spaces. I'm going to show you illustrations of all these over the next couple of minutes, but I wanted to start out with that if you're thinking about AI in education, we have to remember to quote Sir Ken Robinson, one of my favorite educationalists ever, that education is a human system, not a mechanized system. And when we think about AI, yes, there's so much about the technology and so many things are shifting and changing, and we're seeing this rapid evolution of the technology on almost an hourly basis. But if you don't have the human investment and you don't have the human capital, then you're not going to succeed in this operation. And so that's one thing that I want to, if I could give you a slide that was like a one to take home with you, this is the one that I would say is the most important on the entire deck, because it shows you why, not the, and there's the how of the technology, but this is the why of how we're really succeeding. So let's get into some of the nitty gritties here. So first of all, we were the first state, Utah was the first state with an AI expert at the state level in education. So that's myself. I was hired off of out of a statewide group called Utah Education Network. I'm going to talk about them later because they're pretty important to this conversation as well. But we were the first state with an AI expert at the state level. I was hired in June of 2024. So again, roughly about 16, 17 months in this role. And I was asked to basically hit the ground running as quick as possible. So I started to work with teachers, work with our districts, having meetings with our superintendents, our school boards, going out and doing training, securing grant money almost immediately. Most of the time that takes some startup time and some investment, but I had a lot of help and backing to really just start running as fast as I possibly could. And so in that, we've done some really innovative things over the last year, and we'll talk about those over the next couple of minutes. The second thing, folks, is that we were the first state in the United States, and we're now only one of 3. Oh, before I get into this, sorry, second bullet point, I want to go back to one first. I was the first, and now we have a whopping 6 statewide AI experts across the country. There are other states that have other people who are doing AI, but they're also doing like 9 other things. And so this centralized investment is really important. All right, now on to bullet point 2. Sorry, I apologize. We were the first state in the United States to have what we call consortium pricing for AI education tools. And I'll talk more about this in a bit, but just to give you kind of the high level, about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, our statewide teams came together and said, we really want cheap, effective AI tools. And we were able to get them at a massive discounted cost, as opposed to going out to individual companies and have our schools go out to individual companies. And so it's helped with adoption to speed it up. If you're looking at a mechanism that is both, again, human and then this kind of economic cost, getting consortium pricing is really helpful in a system. The third one is not anything to do with education, but or in terms of the creation, but it has been so helpful. In Utah, we are lucky to be the first and only state currently to have what we call an Office of AI Policy. I'll talk more about them in a little bit. I'll show you their website and walk you through as well. But they're the group that stands between the consumer, the person using AI in their home or in their office or at school, and the producer of that tool. And then they do regulatory mitigation between those two spaces and advise lawmakers in the state of Utah around what are some of the best policies and laws that we should be enacting around this. And I'll talk more about this later, but it's been so helpful to have them in the state of Utah to ask questions, to be a thought partner, and then also to feed them things that we need so that they can go and research them as well. The last thing is we're hoping to have this published this month. It's been delayed because we had other priorities at the agency to get published, but we have a Utah's portrait of an AI-infused educator and learner to help guide our AI literacy efforts across our K-12 space. We also are working with business leaders to build a portrait of an AI-ready company and a portrait of an AI-ready employee. And then we're working with higher ed to do that for professors and students as well. And so we're trying to build a whole ecosystem here in the state of Utah around what we would like to see happen with AI over the next 5 to 10 years and guide that out and work with the companies who create these tools to really get there. So again, Utah is trying to be a model not just for the United States, but for the entire globe. There are lots of people I've talked to, again, when I'm talking to this wonderful group, but then also groups from all over the globe about what we're doing, because everyone's trying to sort this through. And so before I move on to like some of the nitty gritty things and show you some of the websites and things like that that we're relying on, I would really ask you, as you work on this, as you think about AI in your own spaces and your own educational systems, to think about how you can collaborate and work with people who are around in your same area. It has provided so many positive experiences for myself and for the students and teachers of the state of Utah to really have these conversations and collaborations rather than sitting in one space. We often put ed tech and educational technology tools in one space and we forget to share them out with everyone else. And it really needs to be a global conversation. One big area that I'm really thinking about this heavily is in special education, how AI can work that through. And I'm working with our teams at Utah State Board of Education, our lawyers, to better understand what are the nuances of special education and how AI can kind of interact with those as well. So when you get back to your roles, wherever you're at in education, thinking through how does this support my area, my school, my district, my school system, whatever you're in, but how can I help support somebody that's nearby as well so that we can all grow and build together? So again, kind of framing, this is a framing quote. I started out as an English teacher, teaching literature to college students and then to K-12 students. And I love James Joyce. He's one of my favorite authors. And I always think about when we talk about AI, this quote: I am tomorrow or some future day what I established today. I am today what I established yesterday or some previous day. And why this comes back and resonates with me is that we are working in a system that is changing so rapidly, whether it be education or AI or those two together. And if we start establishing what we need today and start building, we're going to see dividends down the line that really help us to understand and do the best thing for our students and our teachers for the future. You'll see examples of that over the next couple of minutes as I get into some of the things that have been happening in Utah that have allowed me to get to this space as well. But again, we have to establish what we want the system to look like today so that we can do it into the future. So with that said, I want to give you, again, these three parts. So we're looking at visionary leadership and existing structures. We have collaboration between agency and expertise being shared openly. These are things that the three components that are the secret sauce of what's happening here in Utah. If I didn't have these three components, it would be really, really difficult to get things done. So I want to spend a few minutes on some visionary leadership and existing structures. These include the superintendency here at the Utah State Board of Education, as well as our board, the Office of AI Policy, some of our higher ed institutions. But then I want to spend a little bit of time on DTL, Digital Teaching and Learning, C-Forum, and TCC. So I'm going to switch pages here really quickly, if I can. Oh, this is being difficult on me. I'll stop sharing for just 1 second, and then I'm going to go back and share the right tab that I need. So I'm going to start with this map. One of the things that allowed me in Utah to really fly quickly is being able to be able to have good infrastructure around what we're doing in the state of Utah. So in 1994, going back, almost 2 decades, Utah Education Network was commissioned by our governor and by our legislature to build a systems map of what the infrastructure of our internet would look like. Now, this was 30 years ago and just barely getting into dial-up internet. The University of Utah, which was one of the first nodes on the internet, was asked to really dive into this, and UEN was brought along. So flash forward 30 years, Utah has free internet for every publicly funded school in the state of Utah. So if I go into a district in, let's say, I'm in right now Salt Lake City School District, if I go down to Granite next door, all the internet in those buildings is free through Utah Education Network. On the Wasatch Front, which is our big urban area, it's 400 gigabits per second. And they tested that a few months ago, or about a month ago, and they said we need to up that because of AI. They're seeing network loads around 350 gigabits being used every single day because of the AI boom. And so they're working on building that up. But I'll put this link in the chat in a few minutes towards the end of the conversation. But even in some of our more rural areas, we are seeing speeds of up to 1 gigabit per second. That really rural school I brought up a few minutes ago, Navajo Mountain, they're still getting 200 megabits per second or megabytes per second. That's incredible. And again, it's all free to Utah schools. And so having this infrastructure in place has paid so many dividends for us over time because it's given us a backbone to really work through what is happening around our infrastructure and technology. So that's number one. I'm going to stop sharing again to get you the second slide here. And I apologize, my computer's being a little weird, so that's why I'm working it through. So the second thing that I want to point to is a grant program that we've had in the state of Utah for the last few years. In 2015, 2016, a colleague of mine named Sarah Young, who is now working at Western Governors University, a for-profit university, she put in for this grant with a colleague named Rick Gaisford. And Rick's been in Utah education since 1999. So he's one of my favorite people. I go to him all the time with questions because he knows everything. This program, it's called Digital Teaching and Learning. The website is dtl.org, and I will, or dtlutah.org, and I'll again share that in the chat in a few minutes. This is some model legislation that anyone could take back to their local government and use. Basically what it does is every year our legislature here in the state of Utah funds anywhere from 18 to 22 million dollars direct funding to our districts and charter schools. How it works is that everyone gets a flat rate, and then per pupil they get a certain amount of money. So larger districts get more money, smaller charter schools get smaller amounts of money. The money is directly targeting technology infrastructure, coaching, professional development, and training. And so when I was a recipient of these dollars in 2017 when they first rolled out the program, my district technology person came to me and said, "Hey Matt, we're going to go one-to-one with laptops in your building. It's going to be awesome. You're here. That's why we're giving it to you, because we know you'll support it." And I went, "Great, that's going to be really fun." But basically over a summer, we went from having no technology in our building. We had a few carts to every student had a laptop. And that was really, really helpful to get the ball rolling. And this has created an infrastructure for that. Across the state of Utah, we're about 90% one-to-one with laptop computers. So most of them are Chromebooks. There are a few districts that have iPads or Apple devices. But it has, again, allowed students to take home, do work at home, do all sorts of amazing things. One of my favorite people in the state of Utah is a professional named Jason Ayer. And Jason has a large population of homeless students and students who are from refugee backgrounds in his district in Central Salt Lake. And with the homeless students, he noticed that they weren't able to get a charge at home. And so he created a program where he trades laptops with them at the end of the day. They have essentially 2 laptops. They take one home with them that's fully charged, do their homework, bring it back, switch it out for their school laptop. It's pretty incredible work, and he's been using AI to help him do translation for his refugee populations. This website, again, I'll put in the links in the chat in a few minutes, but this actually runs down every bit of the grant program that we've been doing for years and years and years. And what's really wonderful about that is that on any of the pages on here, we actually have been tracking AI dispositions over the last few years. So as you read through this report, and I'll again hand that off to you in a few minutes, you will be able to look and see all of the different nuances around where teachers are growing with artificial intelligence. My favorite stat on there is when I came into the role, they had a question on there that was, and I think this is an essential question, if you're thinking from a policy or from a system standpoint, again, school system, building system, whatever it is, one of the best things you can do is create a policy around your technology use around AI, especially around plagiarism or cheating, and then moving that into how we're going to use it on individual assignments. When I came into the role, they had a question on the DTL survey that goes out to all of our teachers statewide, and about 50% of our schools said they don't have a policy, they don't think the one's being built in 2024. In 2025, when we ran the data again, that had completely disappeared, and we had that 50% go into either we are developing or we currently have a policy in our district or our school. And so in the 1 year change from when I entered the role, we were able to move that forward. The other thing that's really exciting about this particular work is that we're able to see some scenarios from teachers as well. And so this is, I know, really important for all of us on the call. How are teachers actually using AI to appropriate use? So this is our scenarios tab on the website. You can see I have all the grades kind of outlined there. I can click them on and off if I want to. I have all the content areas, but then I just switched on artificial intelligence, and there's literally about 300 comments on here from teachers across the state of Utah about how and when they're using artificial intelligence in their classrooms. This has been one of the demonstrated needs that we've needed in our classrooms and for our teachers across the state of Utah. But then also I'm hearing from other systems leaders, hey, we don't know how teachers are actually using this. And so this is a starting point for that. In about a month, we're working on it right now. We're pulling together about 500 to 700 of them right now. I'll talk more about a program we're doing, but part of the program that we're doing is teachers are able to turn in a lesson plan for a grant. And we're going to be publishing those lesson plans around artificial intelligence for everyone globally over the next month, so that we can start researching and start digging into what our best practices. And that'll be available. I'll show you where that is out here in a few minutes. But we're really excited to share, again, in the state of Utah, we're really ahead of this work around what teachers are actually doing with the technology. And we want to make sure that we share out what the teachers are actually saying, doing, and building with their students and for their students. And so that's part of the CTL survey. And again, I'll put the links in the chat at the end of the presentation. The next thing I want to talk about just really quickly is kind of another infrastructure thing, is the Office of AI Policy. So I'm just going to pull up their website. This one's really easy to remember, ai.utah.gov. Again, I'll put it in the chat in a few minutes. The Office of AI Policy has been a really great condition builder for us in the state of Utah. So how this came to be is that in the 2024 legislative session, a few legislators came together and said, we need to have a regulatory body around AI for everything, not just for commerce, but to help with everything across the state of Utah. And so they put together some model legislation that built the Office of AI Policy. This department is funded and managed through the Department of Commerce here in the state of Utah. So it sits right there to help out with anything that is business oriented. But their mission is to help any system across the state of Utah. They have two roles that they are trying to fulfill. One, they are a regulatory mitigation body. So let's say a company comes to the state of Utah, they want to work with artificial intelligence, but there's a law or a code that is preventing the positive use of AI. They can work with that law or code and actually pause it, augment it, those sorts of things, and work with legislators to improve that. One big example is over the last year, they have worked with mental health chatbots. So we're not talking like ChatGPT or any kind of large-scale enterprise model that's being used for mental health, but actually bots that are built specifically for mental health. They have worked with those providers, our psychologists across the state of Utah. I worked on it with them as well. And they put together some model code that helped to provide some guidance on that, which is amazing and wonderful. And we've been able to see that through. The other thing that the Office of AI Policy does is research. So they spent a whole year researching mental health chatbots. They're spending this year really diving deep into deep fakes. And then they're also looking at, through me, some special topics in special education and how AI works with that. And so this has been kind of an auxiliary research body that has helped me to answer questions, build scenarios, and really dive deeply into the conversation around AI. Because again, going back to the very beginning of my presentation, I'm not an AI builder, I'm not a data scientist, I'm an educator by trade, and I'm really good at organizing people. And so having lawyers, AI builders, AI researchers available to me to answer questions and build systems with me has been really, really helpful. And that leads me to, I'm going to leave the Office of AI Policy up there for a minute. That leads me to talking a little bit about higher ed. We in K-12 are really, really good at what we do, but we forget sometimes that higher ed is often dealing with some of the same struggles we are. We did a series of AI summits last fall, and I invited higher ed to join us. We had about 600 to 700 people across the state of Utah come out. And what I learned very quickly is that our higher ed professors, researchers, administrators, we're all asking the same questions that we are in K-12. And so as we built our system over the last year and we've worked with different groups, we've invited higher ed to the table. And they're asking all sorts of great questions about what we're doing. One of the biggest groups is the Responsible AI Initiative at the University of Utah. And they've been incredibly helpful to provide support for many of the projects that I'm doing in Utah, but also providing pipelines between K-12 to higher ed so we can build the next generation of AI engineers, prompt engineers, and just responsible users of artificial intelligence. So going back, folks, to the slide deck just for a second, just kind of a thought process here. Again, we have all this visionary leadership and existing structures, whether it be UEN's amazing network that they've built up over the last 30 years, the digital teaching and learning program that provides funding for this and has provided funding for the last while, but then also the Office of AI Policy that's providing all of this wonderful support in terms of expertise. On top of that, we have this tremendous collaboration. I don't need to go to any other slides here, but one of the big things that we're thinking about here is not just thinking about my group, which is USB, but what are the other groups in the state of Utah really doing? So UEN provides a lot of amazing resources like CFORM and TCC, where we get together experts from across the state once a month to have a conversation. And so if you're thinking about your system, wherever you're at, whether it be a school, a district, or a state, or a country, one of the big things you need to think about is there collaboration happening between the agencies, and how can I up that collaboration? It does force you to put your ego down a little bit and realize you don't have exactly the same expertise, but it does pay dividends because all of a sudden you're having these conversations that are much larger and can have a much larger effect size. Like, for instance, one of the things we're working on in Utah is figuring out how to speed up research processes. When we talk about AI in education, again, it's not really validated around efficacy right now. We're seeing some preliminary studies that are fantastic. If you haven't seen the work coming out of Stanford University and their generative AI hub for education, amazing work. And Chris Agnew, who's been building that hub, is a friend of mine. The research is kind of slowly trickling in, though. And so one of the things we're working on with our experts across the state is how to create synthetic data sets to speed up research and really help researchers who are asking really good questions access to databases and information at a much faster rate. And that would only come if we had that collaboration between different agencies and supporting. The last thing here, folks, is just expertise is being openly shared. As you can see, lots of really smart people here in the state of Utah. I'm sure you have tons of smart people in your systems as well. But unfortunately, because of the way our systems are sometimes made up, we don't always share our expertise and we don't always share what we're doing. And so I've basically created an open book, like an open door policy. I'll share whatever I can that I've been told is publicly available with any group, in state or out of state, so that everyone kind of grows from the work that I'm doing, and then I can learn from other people's work as well. This has paid dividends in working with other states. I do close collaboration with almost 30 states across the country. We actually have our monthly meeting tomorrow morning, and it's been amazing to see how they have benefited from my research and my work, but then also I'm benefiting from their work and their agencies as well. So that's, again, the big three things going back to human capital, folks. So let's get into some nitty gritty here. Some of the steps towards AI integration in Utah schools, some of the things that we've been really working on. We've talked about a few of these. So again, we talked about the UEN high-speed internet network. This is free and publicly available to all Utah schools that provide the actual infrastructure here in Utah. Then we have this digital teaching learning grant. The other thing that we also have ongoing is what's called the PCBL grant, or Personalized Competency-Based Learning Grant. This is connected to our Portrait of a Graduate. If you're not familiar with Portrait of a Graduate, it is a visionary document that helps everyone in the system, parents, students, teachers, administrators, state workers, what we would like to have in our students as they graduate high school. So there's things around academic mastery, like being able to say, yes, I have mastered English or writing or math and science. But then other things like, are you able to collaborate? Do you have respect for other people? Do you have financial literacy? And so the Portrait of a Graduate is tied to this PCBL project. And for the last about 7-8 years, we've had a grant funding from the legislature to give exploratory grants to our districts and charter schools where they can try something new and build a new system inside their school to kind of up all of those skills that are in the Portrait of a Graduate and all those competencies that we want, but then also to help provide support for doing something a little bit different that may feel a little bit odd in the general educational ecosystem. So those are long-term systems that we have. Just a couple other things. So when we started thinking about planning around this, it all started to coalesce very, very quickly. So as we know, ChatGPT hit in November of 2022. I was on a statewide team at Utah Education Network providing training, and I got a DM from one of my direct message from one of my colleagues, and she said, "Have you seen ChatGPT? We probably need to do something about this." And I looked at it. I had already seen it, but I looked at it even more deeply, and I went, "Yep, we got to move on this." So we very quickly at UEN started building some things, but across the table at USB, where I wasn't at yet, but now I am currently, they had the same experience from the discussions I've had with internal team members. They went, "Wow, we really have to start thinking about this and building it." So in January of 2023, basically across the state of Utah, everyone started building these three things: training for educators, building frameworks, and thinking about providing tools and structures. So the first one is that as part of my work at UEN and that work with that colleague, 4 of us got together and we built a course called the AI Frontier. Sadly, it's been changed over. It's been split into 2 courses up at UEN after I left, which is totally fine. We needed 2 different courses anyways. But this was the first course nationwide that was free through a statewide system to educators, free of charge and for credit. We built it out in about 3 months, and we launched in May on National AI Day, actually, of all days, to all educators across the state of Utah. At the time, usually if we launched a course at UEN, we'd get like 50 people in the course, and it would grow over time. Day one, we had almost 300 to 400 people in the course. And basically, this course allowed teachers to really explore what is AI, the history, some of the ethical questions that were starting to arise. But it was designed to be a primer and then get them thinking about how to use it in class, but with the caveat that we don't know yet. And that's why it's been split into 2 courses. One of them is writing centric to help ELA teachers, English language arts teachers. But then on the other side, it's become kind of this more focused course on tools and how to integrate them in your classroom. So if you're thinking about rollouts in your area and you're thinking about AI, think professional development first. Again, to quote Ken Robinson, professional development is an investment, not a cost. And if you invest in teachers, invest in the professional development, that is an amazing move. I'll talk more about that here in a few minutes when we get to the larger program we've been working on. The second thing that came up is in April of 2024, Utah State Board of Education published their AI framework. This is designed to help LEAs, our local educational agencies, so our schools and districts, to build their safe use of AI. It is a living document, so I'm actually working on phase 2 of this. I'm hoping to have that published next month. Alongside of that, it is not a policy document. So what I mean by that is that this is not legally binding. It is not a document that is enforced in our districts or charters, but it's an aspirational document to show what are some of the things that you may need to consider when you move this into operation in your schools. It has been really helpful for our districts and charter schools. We were, I think, number 15 in the state or in the country to have one of these documents. And again, it's building and changing over time. I'll put the link to that in the chat at the end of the conversation as well. And the third thing that's probably the most interesting, and I talked about this briefly earlier, was Utah Education Network completed a call for proposals or an RFP for 3 statewide AI tools for our schools and districts purchase. Any school in the state of Utah can purchase Magic School, Skillstruck, or School AI, and we added Brisk in July at a severely discounted cost. And we have that until 2029. So it has helped with rapid adoption across the state of Utah. A couple of the companies tell me that they think we're at about 80% saturation with charter schools and districts. I think we're closer to probably 60 to 70%, but still that's very high and very, very quick. And it's so low cost that basically, if we're talking rural districts, they can get these tools at a budgetary level that they feel so comfortable with. And that means that these AI tools that are helping with productivity, with student learning, with developing AI literacy, they're getting into students and teachers' hands very, very quickly. In fact, School AI and Skillstructure are Utah companies. That didn't factor in, they just happened to apply, and we were like, oh, Utah companies, that's amazing. School AI we had one of our districts be the first one to fully adopt an AI program through School AI in the country. It's called Jordan School District. They're pretty amazing. Just to give you an idea as well, we also have some legislative funding around this. And I just want to find the right page. So this is going back over to UEN. This is our software page for Utah Education Network. On here, we have dozens and dozens of programs that are available through purchase, but then also through legislative funding. If you're looking for ways to support teachers, buying tools and training on those tools at a legislative level can be incredibly useful. And so we have Adobe, Canvas, Nearpod, Scribble, all available to every Utah teacher in the state of Utah, as well as students. And as far as opportunity to use AI, I told you about, I'm thinking about 60 to 70% have bought into those 3 AI tools. When we're talking about opportunity though, every student teacher has the opportunity to use Adobe completely for free. All the entire suite in the state of Utah. That right there means that we have 100% opportunity to use AI in the state of Utah. And that's pretty incredible and has helped when we go out to schools that haven't adopted. You can say, oh, actually you have Adobe, you have an opportunity to try this out and dig into it, even though it might be not the chatbot functions. You can do image generation and all sorts of other things as well. And so just really, really valuable, again, and something that we've been doing from a system standpoint for a long time. The last, second to last thing I want to talk about, and then we can get into Q&A here in a couple of minutes, is a program that I've been working on for the last year. It's unique. I don't think many states in the United States have something this large, if any, but then also I think it's kind of unique around the globe. We were given a very generous grant, $500,000 from a local health organization called Intermountain Healthcare to do AI literacy training for our teachers in the state. Again, it's an investment, not a cost. And so part of that grant, when we wrote it, my friend Sarah, who sadly left the agency, when she wrote it, she was like, we'll get about 1,500 to 2,000 teachers. Since April, we've gotten 5,500 teachers to go through this training across the state of Utah. That's roughly about 20 to 25% of our teachers. So 1 in 4 teachers have experienced this training in the state of Utah. We're hoping to be somewhere closer to 30%, maybe even 40%. But that's been just in the last 6 months. We're continuing the training asynchronously because we don't have trainers to go out anymore, and I'm doing all the grading. But we're going to put it up on a Canvas course and allow teachers and students to, teachers to take this course for cash. The training is broken into 3 areas, and it's worked incredibly well. We've gotten nothing but positive feedback. So if you're interested in the model, I can share it with you. Layer 1 is we come out to any of the schools in the state of Utah and do a 1-hour training with them. Now, it could be a little bit longer, it could be a little bit shorter, but that 1 hour is the sweet spot. That training encompasses things like AI literacy, why are we talking about AI in education, the history of AI, some of the key terms, data privacy, ethical concerns like bias and hallucinations, and then giving them some time to, and this is the most important part, play. Teachers need more time to experience these things so that they can actually operationalize them in their classroom. If they don't have time to play, they won't have time to integrate. So if you're thinking about training, make sure that you play. So layer one. Layer two is that they can optionally join a Canvas course. Now that we're moving into a asynchronous model, they'll do all of this online. But the second part is about 3 hours long. They get some extension activities. They connect with other educators across the state. And then at the end, they write a lesson plan that's in their content area and grade level. So like, for instance, fifth grade math that either uses AI with students. So it could be a chatbot generation. It could be something that's modeled with the students in the classroom, any number of things, or it teaches about AI. So maybe they teach about what is a machine learning system, how does an algorithm work. Maybe one teacher that I looked at her lesson plan and loved it. She's a writing teacher. She figured out how to do with her students what the policy in her classroom would be around AI use. All of that is very, very valuable. Those teachers who finish their lesson plan are graded and accepted. They then get a $200 grant through Donors Choose to buy things for their classroom. We funded everything from 3D printers and filament to classroom snacks to one of my favorite ones was a set of volleyballs because there was a gym teacher that needed stuff for the classroom. So far, we've funded almost, I think it's like 300 or 400 teachers. We have funding to do another about 1,000 teachers, and so that's why we're making this asynchronous to up the ability to get teachers into it. All those lesson plans, like I mentioned earlier, are going to be shared on an OER Commons. I'll grab that website and put it in the chat here in a few minutes. That anyone in the world can access, look at, and build from and do research on. This is our gift from Utah to the educator community because nobody's really done this work yet as far as we can find. And we'd really like to start seeing what are our emerging practices, as Victor Lee from Stanford says. So we'll have those out here in the next little bit. To kind of wrap up here, folks, we're looking at some next steps for AI in Utah. First of all, we were paying really close attention to the diffusion of innovation curve. If you've not seen this, you have your early adopters, and then you have your laggards at the end. We're trying to get everyone to be pulled into the middle to really start adopting this technology and normalize it, and so that we can figure out exactly what it does in classrooms and look for those best practices that we know are going to be emerging over the next few years. We're finding and sharing those use cases through the lesson plans, but then also through the DTL work that I showed you earlier, and with conversation with teachers and bringing them out to conference and things like that. We work really hard in the state of Utah as well to protect student data privacy. In the United States, we have two laws, FERPA and COPA, that kind of govern the student data privacy. In Utah, we actually have extra laws and codes on top of that. So I spend a lot of my days at work talking to companies, working with LEAs to really get data privacy in place. And then as we go, exploring innovation and being cognizant of how AI can impact learners 10 to 15 years from now. One of my favorite people in education, she works here locally, her name's Emma Moss. She talks about often that AI was, when generative AI hit in November of 2022, most research scientists said we have about 10 to 15 years where this will be fully integrated into society. Over the last couple of years, it's now shrunk to 5 to 7 years. And so we're looking at a much more rapid pace of adoption and integration into our society. And we're seeing that all across the globe right now. And so being ahead of that, thinking through and using frameworks like the Stanford Design School's Futures framework to really think through what kind of systems do we want in place to have this be best is really important. So with that said, folks, to wrap up, there's my email, matt.winters@schools.utah.gov. I also have LinkedIn. Feel free to follow me there. I'm super busy all the time, but I'm always happy to collaborate and give feedback and jump on a call with people if I have the time. So feel free to reach out, and I'd be more than happy to work with you. I'm going to go ahead and drop some links in the chat of the things that I shared, but we have 10 to 12 minutes, and we're at 11 minutes, so hit it there. I'd love to answer any questions that anybody has, if anybody wants to come off mute or put those into the chat.
Lovely. Okay, so participants, you can write down your questions on the chat and we can have, you know, yes. Okay, in the meanwhile, I have a question, Matt. So I want to understand that how flexible teachers are when it comes to adopting AI, especially, comparing those in higher education with K-12 educators. I want a comparison of both of them, and like who tends to adopt more easily, and what do you think, that what's making their approaches different?
That's such a great question. So one of the things that we've learned very rapidly in doing all these trainings over the last 6 months is that a lot of teachers, and I've seen this also in a nationwide and then international capacity. So I don't think it's just a Utah thing. A lot of teachers, when they come to the table to learn about AI, they start in fear. So they're afraid of the AI replacing them in their job. They're afraid of plagiarism and cheating, or they're just generally afraid of it. There's a few that are really afraid of the environmental costs as well. Those are conversations we can have, and honestly are very rapid to go through and kind of move on. Where a lot of teachers then move is in what we call phase one. Phase one is productivity. So teachers often go straight into, how can AI benefit me? I can write an email faster, I can generate a lesson plan, I can put these images together, any number of things. But it's a very self-centered, and that's not, I'm not saying it's selfish, it's just a self-centered perspective. And that's fine. But if they stay that way, that means AI only stays with the individual, and we actually want it to be affecting the entire group. So in these trainings that we've been doing, we ask teachers to go, okay, now that you understand what this can do to help you yourself, how can you use this to be more creative? And so we asked them to start thinking about, how can AI help you do things that you've never been able to do before? And that may be coding something. Like, for instance, I helped a teacher code a video game through AI a couple days ago. It was super fun. Another teacher, he is training individual AI bots for every one of his students, because he works with students with disabilities and he wants to make sure that their needs are met. And so they start seeing AI as a whole classroom tool that helps up their creativity. And then naturally the teachers move into accessibility. How can AI help all of my students in my classroom? And so in that process, Santa, we're seeing, as there's not one group that is better than another at like adopting this. It's more those pushing and those nudges as you go through this continuum. How can you get people to not stop thinking, but move from, this is a tool only for me to up my productivity, to this is a whole classroom tool, to this is a thing that can actually help everyone to do things that you've never been able to do before. That is the valuable moves.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Okay, so Ali Murtaza has asked that I'm currently building skills in AI and data science, and I'm really interested in how AI safety engineering connects with model development and deployment. What key skills or frameworks should professional focus on to build systems that are both technically strong and ethically aligned at the same time?
That is a great question, Ali. Again, not an AI builder, but I work with a lot of them, so like I can give you some feedback on that. One thing, especially when we think about the ethics side right now, is there's two big questions coming out of education, especially when we think about sensitive populations like students with disabilities, is one, what is the data set that you're pulling on? And is it actually an accurate representation of the community that you are handing this tool off to? Now, on a global scale, that is massively difficult to do. But when we talk about not large language models, but small language models, that can be a little bit more doable. And so as you build and thinking about your community that you want to deploy this tool in, is it the data that you're using reflective of the entire community, or is it not? And how can you help that through? One of my favorite terms that I've learned over the last couple of years from one of my favorite lawyers, his name's Bennett Borden. he taught me about red teaming. And I think red teaming is so underrated in education, and around these ideas of ethical builds. So if you can red team it around a data and bias perspective, that's really helpful. The other thing that I would think of from a technically strong but then also ethically aligned standpoint is, when we build systems, is there any data leakage from account to account, or from even within the same system? So this is something that I've asked our higher ed partners to help me research, but then also it's been a big ask from people at the state board is, if I were to put in a data set about a student and it's inside the walled garden, the safe environment for my school, is someone else going to be able to see that even inside that walled garden, and being able to make sure that that works? And from a technical standpoint, there are some question marks there. And so we want to see what data leakage kind of plays a role in. And so that's something that I think is going to become more and more a conversational point going forward.
Perfect. Muhammad Yasir Khan has asked that in terms of the evolution of LLMs, how much will approaches like incorporating the parts framework, PARTS parts framework, or knowing how to prompt will change with advancement for teachers?
That's a great question as well. I'm not as familiar with the parts framework. You're teaching me, so I'm going to go look at that here in a few minutes after I get off the call. But in terms of, I want to address the second part, the prompting part. I think it's so important that teachers understand that when one of the things that I'm combating right now, and I think it's really important that everyone is aware of this, is that there was the initial perception of generative AI in 2023 that most people have held on to. And so for teachers, they've held on to, your prompt has to be perfect. It's got to hit all these different parts. They probably saw something about like some person from Silicon Valley building a massive prompt around an image generator, and it's intimidating. But now in 2025, leading into 2026, we know that to write a good prompt, you have to think about two things. One is that it's recursive, so you can come back to it again and again, and that most bots, especially the big enterprise models, it's conversational. And so most teachers think they have to get it right the first time, and they can't come back to it again and change things. But once you get that into their thought process, that really helps. And so I think prompting is going to continue to change as we move forward, but we have to combat that first impression that many educators have and many users have around AI that are not technically minded users, so that they can kind of build through it, those sorts of things.
Perfect. Heather Farouk has asked that what are the key metrics or KPIs to track impact of AI in education?
So a couple of the big things that I look at in my system, one is there adoption happening, and is there mechanisms for that? That's why we spent so much time on what tools are available, and is there a cheaper cost, or are they actually provided through the governance factor? That's a huge metric right there, because if you don't have an AI system that's officially used in your school system or building, it's probably not going to happen. It's going to happen in spite of you, but we don't want just it going off and students using AI tools on their own for schoolwork. We want there to be some sort of system enveloping that. The other thing that I'll point to is training. I didn't mention this earlier, but when we think about training, it can't just be for educators. We're also thinking about parents, students, teachers, administrators, systems folks. So right now, those are the 5 areas that I'm really working on. Students is probably the least one, because I'm working with the teachers, and those are hopefully influencing the student populations. But as part of that grant that we did, leadership was not in there. So principals and building leaders and systems leaders were not getting training. So we were able to finagle some cash out of that as part of a evaluator process, where they came and did 2 sessions with administrators and leadership across the state. So looking at training from different angles, that's a KPI that and metric as well. How much is getting out, and are you making sure that you're hitting all populations? Zach Boyd, Dr. Zach Boyd, who runs the Office of AI Policy here in the state of Utah, he and I always talk about AI as a wave. It hit all of us equally at once. How do we make sure that everyone in the population has the training and skills they need to work it through?
Lovely. Okay, so that also answers Marva's question. Coming to our last question, which is by Faraz Siddiqui. He's saying that, hi, I am Faraz from Islamabad, Pakistan. How can AI help us in assessing quality of education delivered by a teacher in a classroom?
Faraz, if I had the answer to that, I'd have $1 million right now. I think that's one of the key questions right now is when we think about AI and its power and all the things that are happening, it's an ongoing researchable question. And so that's one of the things that we're doing right now, working with our higher ed partners, is looking at how AI has upped student achievement and quality of instruction. And so those are some of those things that we're working on. I think it's a question that's going to be answered over the next few years because, again, academia takes a few years to really start processing at the research studies, and especially these larger global scales with research groups that are larger than maybe 50 people. We want to have a larger swath of research. And so that I think we're going to see that in the next 2 to 3 years, if not sooner.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Matt, for such a powerful session. And it has been a privilege to, learn from your journey, the expertise you had. And this conversation will definitely, shape how we think and how we will move forward. And we look forward to staying connected and continuing this dialogue.
Absolutely. And I'm just putting my email one more time in the chat. I'm so grateful that I was able to do this today with everyone, and thank you for coming out at a time. I know it's a bit later for you guys on a Sunday evening, and it's early for me, but I really appreciate your expertise and your conversation. Feel free to reach out, and I'd love to support in any way I can.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, participants, I'll see you in our next webinar, which will be happening, of course, in the middle of the October. Our next webinar is with Zina Shilish, and it's going to happen on 13th of October. So, yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys there. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.